My name's Chris Steele. I've been in the insurance business for a little over 24 years now. Work out of Welland, Ontario, and running the same practice since I started back in 1993, I think it was. Oh, the biggest challenge, I think, was my age. Being taken seriously, I think, was the biggest thing. Something that really helped, though, was this thing. I'm not sure if it was a real thing or not, but my sales manager at the time called it a mentorship type of program, where I got the ability to work with a seasoned advisor for a number of years prior to, I guess, going out on my own, in a sense. I'd say the first 3-4 years was like that. And then after that, there was a slow separation of the senior advisor and me, mainly because the senior advisor was looking to retire. So it was a really good, I would say it was a really good transition for his clients and for me as well. Based on what I experienced, I thought that the mentorship program and working with a senior advisor for the first little while anyway really did help. There's a lot of things that aren't in textbooks that you learn from someone who's been in the field for such a long time. So I think that type of experience was very good for both parties. It was a mutually beneficial relationship, I believe, anyway. The biggest hurdle I'm experiencing in the business right now would be, oh, wow, that's a really good question. I think now it's at a point where a lot of the clients who I've been working with for the number of years are slowly starting to either move on or pass on, which we provide the service for and whatnot, but then that leaves a bit of a hole. So then there's some sort of generational planning that has to happen. I think the second generation block of business can be attracted to your current business by getting them involved in some of the planning, especially if you're able to get them in the room, if they become a POA for one of the clients or they become a trustee or something like that. And you can get them involved in the system, your situation or what you do for their mom or dad or aunt or uncle or whomever. They can see the value and benefit of that. And then they can sometimes think, well, maybe I want what my mom or dad or aunt or uncle had. That's how I look at it anyway. I find that nearing the end of the planning phase, depending on how much they've been willing to interact with the advisor or interact with their advisors wherever they may be, that sometimes they don't have enough saved and they're looking elsewhere. They may have to take on a second job or whatnot. Although working with an advisor, they tend to be closer to that goal. And that's, I think, the value of having an advisor is you get very close to that goal. Hopefully you exceed the goal. But the idea is to get as close as possible to that goal, whatever that goal may be. And the advisor tends to help with that. I find that initially when they first retire, they still want to have all their hands in the different pots and their advisors, their accountants, their whomever, their bankers. But in the end, I think it comes down to they want to end up dealing with one person, one kind of, I don't want to use the sports term, but quarterback might be a good one, where they go to that one person who works with everyone else. And if you can become a really good team player and work well with those other advisors in their life, because those advisors are in their life for a reason. They value them, and the last thing you want to do is alienate them at all. So you work with them, get on a good side with them, and in the end, that client will consistently come back to you first before they go anywhere else for advice. I believe that during the next little while of wealth transfer from the baby boomers towards the children or whomever it is that's going to acquire those assets, those are the people that we truly need to get involved in the planning process. Because the last thing we want to hear is that story of the lottery winner that has $1 million one day, 3 months later he's got nothing, and he owes more than he ever won. So the idea here is getting those people that are accumulating or going to inherit a lot of money involved in the process. And if you're trusted by the parents or trusted by the people who have that money, perhaps you could slowly develop a relationship with those people who are going to inherit that money. Depending on how you do it, depending on your practice, getting them involved in a meeting or two, inviting them in when you meet with them, inviting them in when you do a change of beneficiary or a change to the account or a change to the income stream, whatever it may be. Any type or anything that you can do to get those people involved in a nice, passive, comfortable way, you know, that you can slowly work towards them as a client. My process meeting a brand new client would be whether it's from a referral or typically it's from referrals. I don't typically get cold calls. It's very rare. Usually it's a referral from someone I've been working with, either through a group plan that we deal with, a group retirement plan, or it's an existing client that said, you should deal with so-and-so or me. The process would be a lot of listening. It'd be a lot of listening. Each client has its own specific story and a specific idea or goals or plans. And a lot of times it's just asking them what their overall intent is and what they're hoping to achieve by using a planner. I listen. I ask them if it's okay if I take some notes, usually on a blank piece of paper. There's no agenda. There's no anything initially, the first meeting. Okay, we're talking about a very first meeting. It's just very calm, it's a conversation, basically. See whether we get along, whether I get along with them, whether they get along with me. Kind of explaining the process. Really, we're not talking about any specific product. There's no products really mentioned. There's nothing really mentioned other than just overall expectations. And then from there, we can develop some form of step-by-step plan to get them wherever they want to go, based on our first meeting anyway. Next step would be hoping that they would come back after I give them a call to let them know that I'm ready with my assumptions and a little bit of a report as to what I understood the meeting to be and what I understood their expectations to be. I'll have an agenda. I typically use an agenda for every meeting. That's not a first time. If it's a second meeting or so on, we have an agenda of some form that details what we're going to do for the meeting, what I'd like to talk about, as well as other areas that they might have that they've forgotten or that I wanted to talk about this. I write on the agenda my notes. After that meeting is finished, if it turns out that they want to make action on something, great, we do it. Sometimes it requires another meeting. Sometimes they need to bring their wife or their spouse or their partner or their business partner, whomever it may be, to help with the planning process. But yeah, it's after the first meeting, usually some form of understood or what I understood from the meeting happens. It goes to them via email or mail or phone call, and then later on they come back in again and we talk. The risk profile for a client is extremely important. This is kind of like the framework. This is kind of like the foundation of the house. It's the foundation of the plan. And typically, you're going to fiddle around with your windows and doors in your house. You might even change the paint. You might make the bathroom bigger or the bedroom smaller or whatever. But you're not going to rip up the foundation. The foundation stays the same. And I find that a risk tolerance or risk profile initially is a very good tool to use to keep everyone on path, including myself. Because I think as advisors, we get a ton of information at us every day. And we can end up making some decisions or want to make decisions that perhaps may be the thought of the day. When we review the risk tolerance, it brings us back, no, this is where we're staying. Mind you, as clients age, risk tolerance does need to be reviewed. And I would suggest that it be reviewed regardless every 5 years or so, minimum. Because things can change. Babies, deaths, change in jobs, you name it, anything can happen. So as we review those risk tolerances, then we can review the plan as well. And perhaps as we get older, we have less time to accumulate, so we are going to reduce the risks, and we're going to explain that, or I'm going to explain that to the client as we go, to ensure that what we've accumulated, we're not losing. A few things that I might suggest for a newer advisor that's perhaps only focused on life insurance. And nothing wrong with that. It's a fantastic business. I still sell lots of life insurance, but the point is, if you're getting into the wealth side of things, you may want to, during your next discussion with your client, ask them about their assets and where they are. Maybe ask them, what is it about the person you're dealing with that you like the best? What is it that, if you could explain to me why you deal with Ted or Joe or Sarah or Ann at the bank or at Edward Jones or wherever it may be, what is it about them that you enjoy? Why do you consistently work with them? That might be the first lead in. That may then let them know that you do provide those types of services as well. They may have never known. They may have thought you're the life insurance specialist and that's what you do. And they would never have thought to bring it up. So perhaps bringing it up and letting them know. Because there is many times that I've been sitting across from a client and they said, wow, Chris, I never knew you did that. And that puts me back and go, wow, maybe I never told them. So that's the first one, would be suggesting it or letting them know that you do that. So I think the conversation has to happen, the relationship has to be there for you to be comfortable enough to explain or at least ask the question to the client. That would be one of the things. So as a good example, recently I met with a life insurance client of mine, and we were reviewing their insurance, reviewing the idea of topping up their universal life contract. So everyone in here knows universal life contracts, depending on where you get them, they all have minimums and maximums that you can deposit in. He was talking about a tax-free deposit and how that can earn tax-free growth. And he knew about it. And I asked him, does he have any tax-free savings accounts anywhere else? Did you know that I do that? No, I didn't, Chris. So I think that's a really simple example of just explaining that even though that was a really nice lead-in for me, because he already talked about tax-free money, he didn't know that I did that. He didn't know that tax-free savings accounts were something that we did. So that was a really good example where he's like, oh, well, really? Well, where do we do that? How can we do that? Then the conversation goes from there, and we have that investment conversation rather than just the risk management of life insurance. Another good example would be when I was doing group benefits with my business partner who does benefits as a living. I sit in on some of the meetings with her in case there are questions about investments. And when that does come up, I take the questions on. A lot of those members didn't know that that's what we also provide. Again, it's not necessarily about assuming that the client knows everything you do. They don't. I assume that my accountant does accounting. I don't know anything else what he does. Perhaps they do estate planning. Perhaps they do I don't know. But until I ask, I wouldn't know. I think our job as advisors is to ensure that we've covered all those areas with a client. So if I can put it towards a fiduciary responsibility, let's just say, if I'm explaining to the client that I do life insurance, I also have to explain that I do disability insurance, critical illness, long-term care. Did you know that? You do. Okay, great. We've talked about it. Perfect. We've had that disclosure. Well, I think I would be remiss if I didn't let the client know also. Did you know I do retirement planning? Do you know about RESPs? I hear someone in your family is disabled. Do they have an RDSP? Do you know how they work? Explaining to them as an information piece. Let them decide whether they want to work with you based on the relationship you already have. Previously, I mentioned something about investment advisors that the client may have that you didn't know about or you knew about. What could you do to position yourself as someone that they would go to instead of that person? Talking to them about what they like or don't like even about that advisor. What was the one thing that frustrates you the most? Is there a way that we could position? Can I take a second opinion? Do you do second opinions? Yes, give me your paperwork. Let me take a look at it. No, nothing. I'm not going to strong arm you into moving anything with me. Let me give you a second opinion. Take it back to your advisor. See if you want to make those changes with you. Perhaps it'll work. Perhaps they'll say, wow, that was pretty cool that he gave me the paperwork back. Now let me see what else he can do. And perhaps you can slowly work your way into working with their money. But it's a process. Like, you're reaching into that guy's pocket, taking their money. That's what we do as advisors. So we have to do it in a way that's respectful, in a way that shows we're compassionate and empathetic about it, and in a way that we get it. We have to show them that we get them. And if we don't get them, they're never going to deal with us. So over the course of the 25 years, working with the individual practice that I work with, as well as my business partner doing group retirement plans. So that would be group RSPs, DPSPs, IPPs, and some formal defined contribution pension plans. The assets are just under 100 million. So over the course of starting with 0 to 25 years later, the mark, I achieved more than I thought I would as far as assets go, because when you first asked me to do this, Don, I had to go check. So I was starting to review and I was like, wow, it has happened. And it was very interesting to me the way it worked, because as an individual advisor, accumulating assets was a challenge, obviously. But then as I started to partner up with my business partner now, who does group benefits, sitting in front of 25 or 30 employees to explain the benefits of proper retirement planning, I found that those members of those group plans slowly started to trust me and started to use me as their primary advisor. So not only was I dealing with a group plan, but I was dealing with their personal assets as well. And then the wife was involved because the wife wanted to know what he's doing at work. So I'd meet with them at their kitchen table. Or maybe they'd meet me at their office, or I'd meet them before shift. But it slowly happened where the group benefits side of things has helped to slowly improve my individual business by those, wealth transfers as they retire or when they terminate. Someone terminates from a company after 20 years, there's a lot of assets. They move them over to a guy that they've been dealing with through their group plan. So the two together work really well. And that was one of the key points was when you asked me about this was it's teamwork, utilizing the people that you have around you for what they're really good at. Whether it be outside advisors, their accountants or their lawyers or their bank managers or whomever it may be, or people in our industry, group benefits specialists, can open up some incredibly large doors. And if done right, you can accumulate the assets and keep them. Over the course of the years, by developing some really good relationship with carriers, not to mention carrier names, I know that's not what this is about, but there are some specific group carriers that I've developed some really good relationships with. And because they know that we're going to take care of the client and we're going to keep the assets with them, hopefully, that's the plan, they are very much willing to share their expertise with me on what they've known, what they've seen, what they've experienced in the business. And those little bits of information put all together can help me accumulate more assets. So again, on the teamwork side, it really does help to have and develop some really good relationships with the carriers. The carriers should be considered an asset, not an adversary. The carriers can definitely assist in providing you with some exceptionally good information and exceptionally good client retention tools to make sure those assets remain with you. Our job is an advisor to the client. Our job is, or my job is to be the one that hopefully they go to first. In order to do that, I can't make this about a product. This is not about a product. This is not about the best UL, the best TFSA, the best mutual fund, the best seg fund. It's not about that. This is about the relationship that you develop with the client. This is all about you listening effectively and being able to repeat back to the client what they're trying to say to you in words that hopefully they'll understand. Making sure that what the client has told you is going to be listened to, is going to be acted upon, and is going to be considered as important as all the things you have planned for yourself for the rest of the day. They want to feel that they're just as important as you making sure you stop at the bank to transfer the money into the wife accounts because she's going to go shopping for you later on this afternoon. Whatever it may be, whatever's most important to you, the client needs to feel that from you. You can't fake it. You got to show you're listening. You got to really, really show you're listening. 2 ears, 1 mouth for a reason, right? That's what I look back at. But bottom line, if you keep it simple, keep the client engaged, and make sure you're engaging with the client, I think it can't go wrong. I really think that it can't go wrong.